Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Welcome to the bonus show. David, did you watch the Monday Night Football game?
I did not watch it.
All right. It was between the Seahawks and the Saints. And it was a complete blowout. So much so that I'm picking Seattle to win the Super Bowl this year. It was that impressive. And I guess this is not really a brand new thing in the Seahawks stadium, but the crowd noise actually registered as an earthquake in between the magnitudes of 1 and 2 coming from the stadium. And this is incredible. I've been to some loud places, including the Garden in Boston. That gets pretty loud. We've been there for some playoff games even, and that got ridiculously loud. But this has to be altogether just on another level.
It sounds like it. Yeah. Now, I'm curious, it is in Seattle. Is it possible that a lot of other stadiums would also, quote, register as earthquakes if they were in more earthquake-prone areas where there might be more seismographs and kind of earthquake measuring equipment? Is there something specific about Seattle and the location of the stadium that is a factor here?
Maybe it's just not under observation in other areas. It's possible, but this is, I guess, they're just infamous here for being insanely loud, which actually helps your defense when you're interrupting play calling and such.
Does Seattle even have a history of having a very good football team? Like, why is it that they have such a loud place?
I don't know why it's so loud. I mean, they've been good the past couple years. They're really just starting to turn it around. And I don't know. I would assume that the better they get, the louder it will be, because I guess the only other time they did this was in 2011. So pretty recent, I guess. But I think generally it has been considered a pretty loud place overall in terms of football arenas. But anyway, we'll keep our eyes on the Seahawks, see what happens. It's time for a China story. I know it's been, how long has it been? A week? 2 weeks? It's been too long. It's been too long. China's back, and it's better than ever. Beijing is waging a war against air pollution. We know that it's heinous. It's just disgusting, the air pollution in some of these big cities in China. And in Beijing, officials have destroyed more than 500 open-air barbecues. That's right. They're going around blowing up people's cooking devices in an attempt to cut down on a certain type of particulate, PM 2.5, whatever that is. People are outraged, saying that this is just completely ridiculous when you consider the pollution coming from cars, factories, plants, you name it. I mean, this has got to be a fraction of a percentage, right?
Yeah, you know what I thought when I was reading this? I thought this is more absurd than when Mitt Romney suggested to solve the budget issue in the U.S. to cut funding for Sesame Street, right? Like these drops in the bucket that we're talking about. It seemed kind of like the same type of thing, but even more exaggeratedly absurd.
Right. This has got to be even more ridiculous than that. And I feel bad because the Chinese are master barbecuers, and this is just not the way to go. I'm very disappointed with China, and I bet the people are too. Let's focus on the real issues here.
Hey, you want to hear something really interesting though about China that this reminded me of? I think you'll like this story, Lewis.
Okay.
I met someone who is in graduate school here in New York City, and she's a woman from China. She moved to the U.S. specifically for this graduate program, right? So it's not like she lived here for a while before, just moved to the U.S. 2 weeks before the start of the program here in New York City. And when there was a discussion about religion in a group of people, she basically said, I don't really understand the concept of religion. Like most people in China aren't really religious. And it's kind of a weird concept to me. I don't really get it. It was just amazing. And in a way, it was kind of refreshing because to her, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't really care. I don't really know about Jewish. I don't really know about Muslim or Christian. Just where I'm from, it's just like nobody's really religious in that sense. And on the one hand, it might seem to us like it's her who is underinformed or somehow sheltered, but at the same time, not seeing so many things through the lens of the traditional religious kind of establishment probably allows her to be more open-minded in some ways.
Yeah, that is interesting. I know there is Christianity over there,
Yeah.
but hey, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard about China. Um, no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. There's lots of cool stuff about China, but yeah, that's great. I mean, I honestly I envy that. That's probably makes for much better living when religion is not part of the equation. Any religion, that being. But all right, China making headlines. Um, Here's an interesting story from the NSA. The NSA actually sent home talking points for employees to use in conversation with family and friends over the holiday season. And I was thinking to myself, you know, first thought was, if this is required of you, if your employer needs to give you this, um, how good can you really feel about your job? And are what people, you know, is what people are saying about the NSA true? If the NSA needs to give you talking points to use with your own family,
Right.
as if you can't even defend it yourself based on its own merits.
So in other words, what you're saying is if you work at a job where your employer feels it necessary to equip you with talking points for casual holiday conversation, you should question the job.
I would, wouldn't you?
Well, let me just throw out another example just to kind of explore the statement you're making. Let's say you worked at the Center for Disease Control and flu season coincides with the holiday season, and you receive talking points about how to discuss certain flu-related things with your family. Would that be a red flag? Or would you just be getting properly equipped to answer questions you might be asked?
Well, see, here's my thought. If you work for the Center for Disease Control, presumably you should be able to answer these questions in a manner which you see fit and makes sense anyway. So why do you need the talking points?
I understand what you're saying, and I think with the NSA example, it is actually pretty funny. However, I just don't agree that broadly speaking, we can say if your job gives you talking points, then there's something wrong with the job. I mean, people work all sorts of different jobs, and there's any number of valid and compelling reasons why you might get talking points for having conversations with friends and family.
All right. You heard it. Anyway, if you have family that works for the NSA, push a few buttons at the dinner table and see what happens. All right. Now we need to address this football thing yesterday. Kelly sent us a short essay here. And first of all, okay, well, I'll read it.
So let me reset. By
Yeah.
football, Lewis means the sport that in the U.S. is called soccer. Okay, and we did a story about this, about a 20-month-old being signed. I think it was by a Belgian or Danish soccer team. So Kelly wrote the following to us.
Okay. Kelly wrote, the signing of a baby is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my life. You simply do not know this 20-month-old will develop, and how can you assess talent when the ball is half his size? Even if the ball was small, it is still a stretch. Look at all the hype around Freddie Adu. Let's see. And when he was 14, he was signed to his first contract. Where is he now? That said, if the Belgium club is trying to stake an early claim for first rights to this apparent divine football playing prodigy, on the off chance he develops into the football equivalent of the Messiah, then what does it really matter? I agree. I think it's kind of ridiculous. I just thought it was interesting that culturally they're looking at kids this young because soccer is just so big and important. I agree that statistically speaking, realistically, this kid is probably not going to turn into some soccer god, right?
Yeah, that's probably true. But I really want to focus on part 2 of her email because this is really the meat of it, Lewis.
Okay. Kelly is upset that I put Beckham and Maradona in the same category. I know who the better player is. I was just using names that are popular in the sport.
Yeah,
And
but I thought,
everyone
here's the
knows
thing.
Beckham.
Yeah, when you said if this kid is going to be the next Maradona or Beckham, we were short on time, but I wanted to say, whoa, hold on a second here, stop the clock. How are we comparing Maradona and David Beckham? This is completely ridiculous, and not just because Maradona has brought home any number of highlights during his career playing for my home country of Argentina. Not only because of that, but because he is a much, much better player. It was a little bit offensive what Lewis said. It was a little bit ridiculous. And, say something else. Maradona and Pele, or Maradona and Messi. I mentioned Lionel Messi, or Tevez, or any of the other great Argentinian players or Brazilian players, etc. Remember, Lewis, Roberto Baggio from the Italian team during the 90s? Anyway, I don't know. Brings back a lot of memories from the World Cup. But Kelly, I thought the same thing you did. I just didn't want to interrupt Lewis. He was on a roll. We were short on time. But no question, incredibly offensive comments from Lewis Motamedi on the program, comparing David Beckham to Diego Maradona. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
All right. Of course, he also brought us the best highlight of all time, which Kelly mentions,
yes.
The Hand of God.
The Hand of God. For people who don't know, I believe it was 1986. Maradona jumping up and kind of putting a closed fist right next to his head and making it look like he was using his head to hit the ball into the goal, but essentially punching the ball into the goal. Somehow, nobody called it, no refs called it, and the Hand of God. It's quite an event, really, in soccer history.
All right, so we did our best to address that. I apologize if I offended anybody by dropping Beckham's name into the pool of great players. I take it back. Should I insult him now? Beckham sucks. Screw Beckham. Fuck Beckham. He's a loser. All right. I hope I redeem myself and see everyone tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.